The breadsticks were still warm when Connor leaned back in his chair, clinked his wine glass with a spoon like he was about to propose, and said, "Before we all get too drunk off the company's money, I want to share some news." Everyone at the table, clients, analysts, even the damn intern who kept saying, "Let's circle back," turned toward him like he was Moses coming down the mountain with Wi-Fi. "I've made a tough call," he said, grinning like a game show host, letting Amanda go, effective immediately. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Someone laughed, then silence, cold, flat like the air after a car crash. Connor kept going. "It's just not working. We need agile thinkers, innovators, not whatever this is." He didn't even look at me, just motioned vaguely with a hand like I was some expired coupon. "Incompetent," he added. "She's been dragging us down." He said it the way someone orders a coffee, casual, transactional. One of the clients blinked, leaned back. Another reached for the wine bottle with the panic of someone realizing they just witnessed an HR violation in 4K. I sat there, not breathing, not blinking. I wasn't fired in a boardroom, not even a performance review. I was publicly executed between the burrata and the creme brulee. Let me tell you something. Humiliation has a flavor. It's warm goat cheese and metallic Pinot Noir, and the acid of your own stomach folding in on itself. If you've made it this far, do me a solid, hit subscribe. Seriously, 95% of folks listen without clicking that little button. I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers so I can keep telling stories like this one. You'd be doing me a kindness, unlike Connor, who served my dignity with a side of artisan flatbread. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My brain was white noise. My ears were on fire. The only thing louder than my heartbeat was the echo of that word, incompetent, looping like a horror movie chant. A waitress came by with the dessert menu. Didn't realize she was walking into a war crime. Someone from accounting mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded, lied, shoved my napkin onto the table and stood up like I knew what the hell to do. Walk out, cry, stab him with a dessert fork. That's when a voice behind me, calm as still water, said, "Excuse me." I turned. He looked like he belonged in a different world, steel gray suit, a calmness that money seems to buy. A quiet kind of menace behind the eyes, like a man who wins by watching other people sweat. "I saw your presentation," he said, 2 years ago. The Logistics Optimization Summit. You built the RouteNet prototype, didn't you? I just stared, pulled out a card and slid it across the white linen like it was an ace in a poker game. "Grant Wakefield, my office. 9 a.m., I blinked. The name hit me like a slap. Wakefield Capital, the guy whose checkbooks could raise the dead. Connor kept laughing at something someone said, like none of this registered, like I was already gone, irrelevant, debris. But I held that card like it was a defibrillator, my hands still shaking, my ears still ringing. I walked out of that restaurant with mascara streaked like war paint, heart splintered, but spine straight. I had no idea what was waiting for me the next morning. But I knew one thing, whatever it wasn't going to be quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at Grant Wakefield's card on my nightstand like it was radioactive. My inbox was already filling with sorry to hear messages from coworkers who either meant it or didn't but couldn't be caught not saying it. The LinkedIn vultures had begun circling too, those weirdly chipper messages. "Everything happens for a reason. Let me know if I can help." Translation: "You've been thrown from the boat. I'm just here to collect your paddle." At 8:45 a.m. sharp, I stood in front of Wakefield Capital's glass tower in Midtown, kind of building where the lobby has a curated scent and you feel judged by the marble. I'd worn the only blazer I didn't hate, hair pulled back tight enough to make me look like I had control over something. Inside, a receptionist with skin like expensive lighting said, "He's expecting you." His office wasn't flashy. No trophy wall, no startup memorabilia. Just books, leather, and a window that made the rest of Manhattan look like a Lego set. Grant didn't shake my hand. He just nodded and pointed to the seat across from him. Then he sat back and said, "I don't like people wasting my time." "You didn't. At that summit, you had something." I wanted to correct him, say had is the right tense. Past, dead, deleted by a man who measured intelligence in ad impressions and suit tailoring. But he kept going. "Your RouteNet prototype. Real-time load balancing for multi-temperature freight. Elegant. Heatmap resync logic was 5 years ahead of the curve." I blinked. Connor shelved it, said it was too internal-facing. Grant smirked like he'd just heard a toddler describe quantum physics. Of course he did. He opened a folder, my folder. Pages printed from a USB I'd thought was lost. My presentation. my architecture diagrams. He even had my hand-sketched flowchart with a coffee stain on the corner. "I want you to build it," he said. "Not the corporate version. Not the Connor's name on the patent version. The real one. Stealth mode, my funding, your vision." I stared. "Why now?" "Because," he said, leaning forward, "your old company's bloated. They've got VC money plugging leaks and interns writing the map. Meanwhile, the industry is starving for infrastructure that actually works. You can either watch them collapse or be the reason." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it felt absurd. I'd just been fired over flatbread and Pinot Grigio. Now I was being asked to architect a logistics revolution like it was a weekend hobby. "What's the catch?" I asked. He smiled. "You'll need to disappear for a while. NDA, burner accounts, dummy LLC, no press. No public GitHub. We build it in the shadows." I thought of my old coworkers, of the Slack threads where I was ignored, of Connor calling me dead weight. "What if I'm not ready?" I said. Grant tilted his head. "You didn't come here to ask that." He was right. I didn't say yes. Not then. But when I walked out of that office with the onboarding envelope and the NDA packet so thick it could deflect a bullet, I knew. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about reclaiming the thing I'd spent years building in silence while someone else took the credit. It was time to make some noise. Onboarding took 5 hours and ended with a biometric scan and a password so long it felt like a Gregorian chant. Wakefield's people didn't play. Before I even saw the project interface, I'd signed enough NDAs to make my future children legally mute. The dummy LLC was called Orion Shelfworks, a name bland enough to vanish into Google like a grain of rice in a landfill. Office was a converted floor in a WeWork knockoff on the East River with no signage and blackout blinds that hadn't seen sunlight since the Obama administration. My old work laptop now sat in a desk drawer, battery removed, screen cracked, almost ceremonial. I'd left it there like a coffin. What I was building now couldn't touch the internet without routing through 3 firewalls and a VPN run out of a basement server in Latvia. First thing I did was sketch out the core logic for what RouteNet was always meant to be: modular, self-healing, and damn near sentient when it came to route forecasting. Cold chain logistics was a puzzle of thermodynamics, timing, and human error. Most systems treated it like Tetris. I wanted to make chess. I couldn't build it alone, but I also couldn't hire publicly. So I did what all the best rebels do. I made a few calls to ghosts. First was Priya, who had been forced out after Connor claimed her code was too dense for agile teams. Translation: too smart for him to understand. She didn't ask why I was calling. She just said, "You have root access?" "Yes." "Then I'm in." Then Gabe, my old QA lead, who'd quietly taken the fall for a crash that was actually caused by Connor's insistence on cutting a security patch for efficiency. Gabe answered on the second ring. "If this is about revenge, I'm busy. If this is about resurrection, send me the repo." Finally, Rosie, DevOps wizard, fired after a single sprint delay that was actually caused by a vendor mix-up. I found her running freelance Docker workshops in Arizona. She asked one question: "Do I get to rewrite the CI/CD from scratch?" I said yes. She replied, "Praise be, send the invite." I paid them with Wakefield money and the kind of respect our old company doled out like rations. Met at odd hours, used aliases even in chat, and kept our devices air-gapped like we were hiding state secrets, which in a way we were. Every commit, every build, every line of test data, it was mine. Ours, not scrubbed through Connor's ego filter or watered down for quarterly optics. We weren't building a platform. We were carving a weapon out of the bones of our failure. Wakefield's only rule was simple: stay invisible, no leaks, no buzz, no press releases. The old company couldn't see the dagger before it entered the ribs. At night, I lay in bed with 3 phones on my nightstand, one for family, one for the team, and one that only rang when Grant had something to say, which wasn't often, but always mattered. I hadn't smiled much since the restaurant, but I caught myself grinning one night watching our prototype simulate a cross-country load route with 0 thermal loss and 38% faster delivery than the current system. No one clapped. No one handed me flowers. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a footnote. I felt like a headline in hiding. The first fracture didn't sound like a bang. It whispered, came in the form of a Slack ping from Rosie at 2:17 a.m. We got our first poach. I sat up, heart skipping. She attached a forwarded email from a regional freight carrier in Ohio, midline transit. The the same mid-tier trucking partner I'd onboarded personally 3 years ago before Connor offloaded them to a junior exec who thought API integration was a dating app. Midline had just terminated their contract with my old company. No warning, no bridge left intact. And in the final paragraph of the email, in bureaucratic poetry, it read, "We've opted to pursue a more agile, transparent logistics solution piloting in the tri-state area. Their real-time chain of custody reporting better aligns with our risk management needs." Translation, our platform, mine. They didn't know I built it. No one did, but it worked. Not beta-tested vaporware or a glorified dashboard with pie charts that made board members feel tingly. This was alive, adaptive, smart enough to reroute perishables mid-transit when a storm rolled in. Transparent enough that Midline's legal team didn't need 3 red lines and a mood stabilizer just to process a shipment receipt. By sunrise, we had 2 more inquiries, small produce haulers looking to trial our system after hearing about the Ohio switch. Nothing major, not a seismic shift, but a tremor, the kind that makes buildings shiver before they fall. At the old company, panic didn't take long. We saw it play out in real time. Rossi still had a back-end tap into one of their public analytics endpoints. Suddenly, their routing prediction page was pulling 400 fours. Their internal load balancing calculator, the one Connor loved to tout at conferences, was quietly removed from the site altogether. Then the cherry. Priya texted. Connor blamed the interns. Apparently, during an all-hands that Friday, he'd gone full witch hunt. Unmotivated junior staff, failure to update third-party partnerships, rogue sales team. He stood in front of a floor of employees and tried to plug holes with buzzwords while the ship kept taking on water. No mention of the defecting clients. No mention of the fact that for the first time since Q4 2021, their cold chain contract portfolio was shrinking. I sat at my desk, watching it unfold, attention coiled in my gut like barbed wire. I should have felt triumphant. I should have poured a drink. But all I felt was anxious, wired, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Grant called, short as usual, soft entry. That was the plan. And it's working, I know. You sure you're ready when it's not so soft? I paused. Yes, because I had to be. My system didn't just steal clients. It exposed every inefficiency, every lie my old company polished and resold like it was innovation. For every pitch Connor ever faked, my platform countered with raw, unfiltered truth. And truth had no patience for branding. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were poking a hornet's nest, one that had investors, lawyers, and PR sharks on speed dial. But we weren't stopping. Not now. Because in a warehouse outside Toledo, shipment of insulin made it to its destination 3 hours faster than projected, cold, intact, and logged in real time down to the second. No delays, no excuses. That was my signature. They just didn't know it yet. It arrived in a heavy cream envelope, the kind usually reserved for weddings or funerals. Certified mail, no return address. Just a name stamped in the corner that made my molars grind. Ludlow and Grayson LLP, same boutique legal firm my old company used when they wanted to crush NDAs or bury whistleblowers in paperwork until they couldn't afford their own groceries. Inside, a 6-page cease and desist letter accusing me of industrial sabotage, misappropriation of proprietary methodologies, and malicious interference with contractual relationships. Fancy way of saying, we know it's you, and we're scared shitless. I read it twice. Once with disbelief, the second time with fury. They said I'd stolen intellectual property, that my new logistics system bore striking architectural resemblance to confidential assets developed during my tenure. Funny, they must have forgotten those assets were mine. Every schematic, timestamp, commit log, I had them all, backed up on a cold storage drive that never touched their network. Timestamped long before Connor ever decided to paste his name across my code and sell it to the board like it came from his brain and not the 2 stale almonds he called a frontal lobe. I handed the letter to Grant during our next check-in. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. Send it to Morgan, he said. Morgan was Wakefield's legal scalpel. She didn't wear power suits. She wore black like a funeral director and smiled like she already knew the verdict. Handed her the letter. She barely looked up. They're not suing. They're trying to scare you into stopping. Is it working? I asked, lips dry. You're still here, aren't you? We didn't just respond. We launched. Wakefield's team countered with a legal notice of their own. a 24-page document detailing unauthorized use of Amanda Lewis's intellectual property, fraudulent attribution of work to non-technical staff, and my personal favorite, breach of employment contract clauses related to developer ownership of pre-existing IP. See, I documented everything, every presentation I gave, every whiteboard session, every email where I submitted Route Net's architecture for internal review before Connor redirected it into his Q3 growth initiative. I even had the original notebook sketches dated and scanned. One of them still had a ketchup stain from a team lunch where he called my mock-up too academic. We filed in Delaware, the jurisdiction where my contract was inked. Morgan's team attached supporting exhibits with timestamps, Slack logs, metadata from Git commits, and early-stage JIRA tickets that still bore my name before they were scrubbed and reassigned. Suddenly, the message was clear. I wasn't the saboteur. I was the original architect. They weren't up against a rogue ex-employee anymore. They were up against a funded operation with teeth. That week, 3 things happened. A mid-level exec from my old company deleted their LinkedIn. An anonymous tip was posted to Blind, claiming Connor used internal innovation as a buzzword shield for cutting senior staff. And I got an email from an old junior developer. They told us you stole Route Net. But after what I saw today, I'm not so sure anymore. For the first time since this whole mess began, I felt it. Not just anger, not just vengeance. Power, the kind you don't announce. The kind that moves quietly through courtrooms and contracts and manifests in the silence that follows a cease and desist returned with fire. We weren't just defending ourselves anymore. We were making a case. And Connor, he had no idea that the most dangerous thing in tech wasn't a fast algorithm. It was a woman with nothing left to prove. Everything documented. It was late. One of those gray Manhattan nights where the skyline looks like it's apologizing for itself, and you can hear every car horn echo like a sigh. I was neck-deep in latency diagnostics when my phone buzzed. Not the burner, not the dev line, my personal phone, the one I hadn't used since the restaurant meltdown. Caller ID, Mark Farrell, old friend. Senior ops manager, guy who once helped me debug a warehouse routing glitch at 3 a.m. with a whiteboard and a bag of stale donuts. I almost didn't answer. But some ghosts deserve a proper hello. Hey, I said cautiously. He didn't waste time. They're cutting people, Amanda. Fast, ruthless. No warnings. My throat tightened. How bad? 4 departments gone. Legal's on edge. Clients are fleeing. We lost global cold. Then try Route this morning. He had contracts through 2026 with them. Gone. His voice cracked, and people are whispering your name like it's cursed. Silence stretched. I waited for him to accuse me. He didn't. I just needed to say it. In case he stopped himself. Then added softer, be careful, they're angry and scared. He hung up before I could say anything back. I sat in the dark for a long time, the screen of my laptop glowing like a funeral candle. Layoffs. Contracts dying. People I trained, mentored, backed through thick and thin, being tossed like expired yogurt because Connor needed someone to blame. And here I was, holding the blade. It twisted in my gut. I'd helped build that place, worked weekends, defended bad decisions, shielded junior staff, spoke up in rooms that got very quiet when I walked in. It wasn't just a job. It was a body of work. My fingerprints were in the steel beams of that company. And now it was bleeding. Had I gone too far? That was the question rattling around in my ribs like a loose screw. Then Rosie sent me a link. No message, just a link. It was a podcast. One of those tech bro thought leadership types where founders talk about disruption while sipping overpriced bourbon in echoey studios. And there he was. Connor, hair a little thinner, smile tighter than usual. At the 42-minute mark, the host asked, "So, what's behind the recent turbulence at your firm? Layoffs, the contract shifts?" Connor didn't even blink. We're moving away from toxic legacy culture. Dead weight, basically. People who couldn't adapt. People who thought they were irreplaceable. I paused the video, breathed once, twice. Then I hit play again just long enough to hear him say, "The future doesn't have room for dinosaurs." And that was it. Any doubt I had, gone, burned to ash. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't scared. He was doing what he always did, blaming the fallout on the people who shielded him from it. I looked around the room. Schematics, prototype modules, network logs. My system was already active in 6 states, with 3 more lined up. Every time it ran a clean shipment, a part of my soul stitched back together. I wasn't just tearing down what Connor built, I was replacing it. Line by line, load by load. I opened my notebook and wrote one line across the top of the page. Finish it. Not for revenge anymore, for clarity. For everyone who'd ever been told they were obsolete. For every underpaid dev who got cut before the stock vested. For every woman in every boardroom who'd ever been told to smile more while some walking haircut took credit for her brain. Connor had made his choice. So had I. The email subject line read, Anomalies at Viron, your insight, came from a burner address that routed through a privacy-forward server out of Iceland. The sender was Julia Hahn, a senior investigative journalist I knew by reputation, someone who'd gutted a pharma CEO last year so cleanly, the man resigned mid-round of golf. Julia didn't chase gossip. She hunted rot. Her message was surgical. I've received documents from an internal source at Viron. They suggest systemic manipulation of performance data, suppression of failed audits, and repeated employee retaliation from a member of the executive team. Your name appears in multiple flagged threads. I'd like to speak, off record if you prefer. I already know the storm's coming. I just want the map. I stared at the screen. She knew not just about me, about everything. A half hour later, I was on a video call, lights off, voice steady. Julia wore a hoodie and no makeup. No small talk. Just this, you can confirm that Connor Maddox altered shipment performance reports before investor meetings? Yes, you saw it happen. I built the originals, I said. They deleted the live query dashboards and replaced them with static spreadsheets. Ones he could tweak. She nodded, like a detective hearing the final confession. And you have proof. I have time-stamped backups, export logs, and metadata trails. I also have the commit history for the old version, before he erased my access. I dropped a secure drive into the chat, encrypted, labeled Viron Integrity Failure Final. Julia didn't say thank you, just good, because the whistleblower backed out. But they left one thing behind. She held up a printed memo. Viron letterhead, internal comms, do not share performance discrepancies with ops or external PR. RouteNet 2.0 is not built to withstand internal challenge. Felt something click into place in my chest. Like bones realigning after being out of socket for too long. Will you go on record? Julia asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes, we spoke for an hour. I gave dates, names, attachments. I didn't vent. I didn't dramatize. I just laid out what happened. What I built. What they buried. What they replaced it with, and how it collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. She ended the call with a single nod. And 5 days later, the article dropped. Inside Viron's collapse, fabricated metrics, executive gaslighting, and the fall of Connor Maddox. It wasn't behind a paywall. It was plastered across every major tech blog, retweeted by freight analysts, and bookmarked by investors who didn't like being lied to. Screenshots, quotes, leaked Slack threads. A side-by-side graph of Amanda Lewis's original RouteNet heat map versus the version Viron had published, complete with missing data fields and projected ROI cells copy-pasted from an internal marketing deck. But the twist, it wasn't just my name in the byline, it was my voice. A 3-minute audio clip embedded halfway through the article, calm, clear, devastating. I didn't sabotage anything, I said. I simply rebuilt what they tried to kill and let it speak for itself. That afternoon, Viron stock halted trading after dropping 17% in 2 hours. 3 board members released a joint statement asking for a comprehensive review of leadership behavior and data transparency practices. Connor canceled his keynote at the Midwest Supply Chain Expo. His social media went dark. Even his PR team's automated LinkedIn posts slowed down like someone yanked the plug. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just went back to work. Because the silence coming from his end, that was louder than any apology. It happened on a Wednesday. Specifically, 3:42 p.m. Eastern, during Viron's highly publicized rollout of RouteNet 2.0 across the Southeast Corridor. Press releases had gone out. Connor had done an interview on Freight Forward Weekly that morning, saying the system would redefine logistical integrity at scale. Their social team posted a GIF of a freight truck morphing into a rocket. And then it began. The first flag came from a driver in Georgia, who posted a TikTok complaining that his refrigerated trailer showed -3 degrees F, but the app said +12 degrees F. Either my lettuce is soup, he said, or your system's drunk. Within 15 minutes, Rosie was sending me screenshots from Viron's public-facing APIs. Data mismatches, route overlaps, old chain packets stuck in a recursive loop, that told some clients their shipments were in 2 cities at once. Then the real panic hit. PharmRx, a mid-sized pharmaceutical distributor, issued an emergency halt on all Viron-based deliveries due to inconsistent chain-of-custody reporting. They rerouted everything, quietly, urgently, to alternate carriers. One's already onboarded with our system. I watched it unfold like watching an animal eat its own tail. In slow motion, Connor issued a staff-wide Slack message that someone leaked to Blind. This is not a platform failure. It's a misconfiguration introduced by external forces. External forces, as if the ghost of competent leadership had sabotaged him in the night. The next morning, 3 of their biggest clients went silent. Not a press release, not a goodbye, just accounts closed. One by one, they flipped. First Midline again, then PharmRx officially, a produce coalition that had once hosted Connor at a keynote dinner, now signing a multi-year deal with Wakefield-backed vendors, ours. We didn't crow about it. No fireworks. Just contracts signed, systems launched, dashboards clean and humming with real-time logistics that actually worked. Thursday at noon, a senior exec at Viron posted a company-wide memo announcing leadership realignment. By 12:14 p.m., news hit Bloomberg. Connor Maddox removed from CEO role amid performance review fallout. There was no quote from him, no farewell post, just a disappearing act, LinkedIn profile nuked. Company bio scrubbed. Even his text talk vanished from YouTube. I stared at the news from my desk, cup of cold coffee in hand, half distracted by a new vendor onboarding request flashing in our dev chat. No fireworks in my chest. No swelling music, just stillness. Quiet vindication doesn't scream. It exhales. That afternoon, Grant called. He didn't say congrats. He didn't need to. He just said they're putting together the press conference. About what? Expansion. Full platform rollout. International. Pause. Your name's going on it this time. I didn't answer right away. Because somewhere, I imagined Connor sitting alone in a co-working space he overpaid for, watching the markets reload, watching the system he said would never scale. Watching his name dissolve while mine returned. No hashtags, no vengeance speeches, just receipts and silence. The ballroom wasn't huge, no banners, no overproduced tech anthem blaring overhead, just glass walls, soft jazz, and a skyline that shimmered like it was applauding from a distance. I walked in alone. No entourage. No PR handler tugging at my sleeve to rehearse sound bites. Just me. Black dress I hadn't worn since before the collapse, and a lanyard with one word printed in clean, deliberate font. CTO. Grant met me near the stage. He didn't hug. He didn't even smile. Just handed me a flute of champagne and said, "It's time." He took the mic, thanked investors, nodded to partners from Berlin and Sao Paulo, and then gestured toward me without flourish, just enough authority to make the room pause. I'd like to introduce the architect of the system that redefined how we move what matters, the mind behind the network, the person who taught us that silence can be louder than a keynote. My name rang out clear across the speakers. This time, only my name. People clapped, some stood, flashbulbs flicked. A few execs from companies that once passed on my early white papers suddenly looked like they'd swallowed sour fruit. I just walked to the podium, hands steady. I didn't prepare a speech. I just breathed. You all know the story or parts of it. I'm not here to retell it. The room quieted, eyes locked. They told me I was incompetent, I said. Dead weight. Obsolete. A pause, just long enough. I didn't argue. I didn't post a thread. I just built the thing they swore couldn't be built, and I watched it work. I scanned the room. No Connor, of course not. But I didn't need him there. His ghost was already burned into the back wall of every legacy company still clinging to bluster over backbone. Someone from the press table called out gently, was it worth it? The kind of question meant to spark a quote. A soundbite for the end-of-year highlight reel. I smiled, not wide, not showy, just enough. All I did, I said, was believe they were wrong. No vengeance, no scorched earth, just fact, delivered quiet as a knife between ribs. The event wrapped. Handshakes, invitations, new clients. Old skeptics suddenly warm, but I didn't stay long. The real victory wasn't in the applause. It came hours later in a forgotten coworking space 3 neighborhoods over. Connor sat alone in a flex cubicle, cracked iPad propped up, watching the live stream on 720p Wi-Fi. No team, no assistant. Just a man surrounded by echoes. My face on the screen, my name in the ticker, and a moment too quiet to spin. He reached to close the tab. Paused, then hit mute, watched anyway, because deep down, even he knew I hadn't just come back. I'd rewritten the terms. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.